These messages will now become subliminal, but your subconscious mind will be hearing and accepting all of the positive messages. Listen to the tapes as often as you can. The more you listen, the sooner success will come.
More like the farther success will become, given all the false information garbage you spew out.
Hello there, fellow Crusaders, and today I am also going to be addressing the following post. It's a claim I've addressed a few times before, but I've seen this a lot lately, so I thought I might put it to bed once and for all.
Listen carefully, you silly prat. I'm only going to say this once. It doesn't matter why dogs bark. They just need to shut the fuck up. There is no excuse for it. That is the first thing to understand.
If it doesn't matter, then why try to argue that it isn't communication? Heck, you just argued that there was no excuse. Despite dogs barking for a variety of reasons, whether it's attention-seeking, medical problems, fear, an alert, sensed an animal, person, or another dog, etc. And I find it interesting that your response to this person calling out, yeah, barking is a communication claim, it doesn't matter, despite you making that claim in the first place, kind of show that your arguments have more holes than Swiss cheese.
But this idea that barking is at all similar to how we use words, now that is anthropomorphism if I ever saw it. You still don't seem to understand why barking is a problem for people. You claim that dogs are supposedly communicating through barks, but what in the hell could they possibly be communicating in scenarios like this? Just last night, in point of fact, I was walking back to my flat. I spotted a dog nutter with two crappy little leash remnants in tow. Of course I did. I wasn't even anywhere near them in this instance, and yet, at least one of them started its yapping bullshit. I immediately aimed my dog bark deterrent device at it, and pressed the ultrasonic button on it. It seemed to work.
What could they possibly be communicating in that scenario?
Oh, I don't know, maybe stay away from me, or don't frick with me. You know, stuff that's obvious judging by your description. Also, ain't anthropomorphism, ninja. When other animals make noise to communicate, like wolves howl, birds chirp, cats meow, etc. And I know you're not gonna say those are anthropomorphism, due to your biases.
Dogs bark because it is an instinct they have. They do not do it to alert. You can tell this is the case, because they bark the same way whether there is someone home where they live, or not. Dogs have to be trained not to bark every single time the doorbell rings, or any time there is a knock at the door or a passerby. They need to be trained not to bark out the window, or indeed whilst contained in their godforsaken makeshift enclosure, which is indeed the nutter owner's backyard or front porch or similar.
Wow, imagine saying something that's right, like, it's an instinct, to immediately saying something that's wrong, like,
they don't bark to alert.
Which is blatantly wrong when there are studies and cases of dogs alerting people from danger. Also, dogs using the same bark is not true, actually. They use different tones to express whether they're happy or aggressive.
They need to be trained to be quiet.
So, doesn't change that dogs use barks to express or to alert.
Dogs will bark whether they are completely alone, or whether there are other dogs around. If there was only one dog on the planet, you can bet it would bark the same way, with no other dogs to supposedly communicate with.
If there was only one cat on the planet, it would still meow and hiss, despite not having other cats to communicate with. If there was only one bird that could chirp on the planet, it would still chirp despite being no other birds that can chirp. If there was only one person on the planet, he would still make noises to communicate.
Mate, this can literally apply to any other animal on the planet. So yeah, pretty bad argument of why
Barking is communication.
Also, dogs barking alone is not entirely true, as dogs have strong senses that allows them to sense through distances and through walls. Meaning they're probably barking at something through a wall or through a long distance.
And they certainly aren't communicating with us. This is a behaviour that had unfortunately been bred into these abominations, and now we are stuck with it. Some claim it served some use or function in the past, and while that may indeed have been the case, this is very out of place in any modern town, city, or village.
This is very out of place in any town or city.
Same can be said about cats meowing, babies crying, kids screaming, loud music, any source of sound, using your logic. And yes, it's extremely obvious that they are communicating with us. Just because you don't understand it doesn't mean it's not communicating. And we all know you ain't gonna say this about any other animal, because you are biased as hell.
For those of you claiming it could potentially alert you to an intruder or attacker or something, that just won't do. The vast majority of people you pass on the street are not muggers, or people with ill intent. Most are not interested in you, or your house gremlin in the slightest. Some may actually go out of their way to interact with your questionable pet, because they are likewise inexplicably enamored with them, so they clearly aren't a threat.
And yeah, you're not wrong that most people you'll encounter aren't home invaders, but saying that it won't do because of that is just false. When home invasions still happen, and all the cases where dogs alert their families about the intruder. Heck, you even contradicted your own point by saying this.
A dog may bark and scare off a would-be home invader once or twice in 16 years, but it will also bark at millions of things it doesn't need to bark at for years and years.
And you try making an excuse to make it seem like it isn't a contradiction, which it is, due to your very flawed logic.
And if it barks and scares off a would-be robber perhaps, it's not what the dog is setting out to do. The mutant barking is simply a reflex, and it'd bark at 10 passerby, the mailman, and an Amazon delivery driver or two in the exact same fashion prior to barking at the robber, and it will randomly bark at many more people after, for no good reason.
No, clown. It is doing what it's intended when it's literally barking at people who are a potential danger to them and their owners. And them barking at mail carriers and other delivery men is a crappy excuse, considering they do not fully know who those people are, and for all they know, they could be potential threats. And I'm gonna end the video right here. Good night.